Meet the intrepid crew of the rogue trader vessel Emperor's Humor 2 as they face the horrors of the warp and void, bravely assembled for their next perilous mission. Lunch!
Howdy, howdy, and welcome back to your Munitorum main-dated break here at the Munitorum Breakroom. I am, of course, your old pal, TikitheHutt, and I'm joined by the ever-faithful Beardo.
Yo.
We got our also improved and super useful to the group, sharing plenty of good info. We got Mortal.
Yo, what's up?
And I'm very proud to introduce a good buddy of mine, Larks. How you doing, Larks?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
We are glad to have you, buddy. So as we all sit here, enjoying our break from this terrible ship we're all stuck on, we generally always ask the new people at our table. We ask them 3 questions. Beardo, what are those 3 questions we always ask people?
Who are you? What brought you? And what keeps you? So Larks, who are you? Tell us about yourself.
I'm going by Larks for now, and I'm getting ready to launch my own YouTube channel coming up soon, Sentinel Wargaming. I'm getting ready to kick that off. It's going to be more tournament focused, reports and tactics to help people improve on their gameplay.
I like it. And we'll be sure to put in links to your channel on the descriptions whenever you get it live. I'm waiting with bated breath to see that come out, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I'm working on my first script actually tonight, so.
Awesome. Well, what brought you to the table?
Well, brought me into 40K. I mean, I've been playing on and off since 3rd edition. My buddy got me into it, and I always played for fun and got into the guard straight away. So that was great. Having to play against Dark Eldar right out of the gate was rough. Played all the way through up until 8th edition, and then took a little bit of a break. Came back at the end of 9th, and just getting back into full hobby swing of it now.
The hobby side, man, building the armies, that's probably one of my favorite things aside from the lore.
Yeah, it's been crazy, and I mean, that's kind of what's keeping me in it right now, is the hobby aspect of it. On top of, I'm playing with a good group of guys. They're really tournament heavy, but yeah. Plus 3D printing has opened so many doors, it's ridiculous.
I've got to get a 3D printer. I've got so much stuff. I've started doing a little bit of 3D modeling, not to any really awesome degree, but just enough to make some little bits for my Tau and for my Raven Guard. I'm so excited to get a 3D printer.
So with a name like MadLarkin, how influenced were you by Gaunt's Ghost series for playing the guard?
So that was one of the things that really got me into it. In high school, and I was living with my buddy at the time, and he gave me a book to read. So I read the first book of Gaunt's Ghost. That really kickstarted me to get into guard. And I always, I started with catechins because it was like the Vietnam U.S. soldiers, from Vietnam. And I wanted to expand on it and go down that route, and I just fell in love with that series, and that kept me into it really deep. So
yeah, you probably heard it on previous shows, but yeah, same here. It was Guns of Tanith that I got, and I still have a love for the Fantine Skyborn, and read Double Eagle and stuff like that. That'll always be my favorite regiment. But yeah, that's because I could recognize a lot even though I was still in high school, I could recognize like, hey, this is like, because I also read some Tom Clancy's, like, hey, this is actually like legit writing. It's not just like, random sci-fi stuff. Like, this is actually really good. It's not fanfic. And even later on, like when I joined the military in my career, I'd still read some of them. I was like, it's like, yeah, they got some stuff right. This is actually kind of cool. That series held my attention for a long time. It's a good series.
Yeah, I'm still listening to them on audiobooks. I go through them every so often and have to re-listen to them again. It's just such a good series, and like you said, I was in the military as well, and some of the tactics actually do hold out, and a lot of that influencing what I'm doing with my guard army now. My guard army is going to be a series of regiments, so I'm going to have like an artillery company that's just its own thing, own separate regiment. I'm going to have like a scout force. I'm going to have a complete like spec ops force, so all scions and Kasserkins. I'm planning on building up just multiple regiments, probably totaling around 15 to 20,000 points, just off the top of my head.
Wow, that is a
Oh,
lot.
that's
of
awesome.
units.
Oh man,
Oh, I'm
I
excited.
love it.
I'm excited.
So I have to ask, like, what are you doing as far as like theming for your guys? Like, for example, my guys, I built mine. They were naval pioneers, so it's basically like there's equivalent in the real world, but I won't go too far into it. But what they were, the way I basically themed them was they had blue uniforms, black armor and equipment, but depending on what their jobs were, they got a color stripe, like on their shoulder and on their helmet. So like vehicle operators were white, weapon specialists were red, so those were like heavy weapon guys or flamers. Infantry was green, and leadership was gold. So did you have something similar? Like, how do you denote like your rank or like what detachment someone's in? Are there different uniforms?
So for each detachment, they're gonna have their own color scheme. So like my artillery company is gonna be a dark blue. They're gonna be their primary color, like the armor color, kind of a mid to dark gray for the fatigues, and then they're gonna have a lightning bolt. So they're gonna have yellow for their pop color and like lightning bolts on their guns and everything else. That's going to be an all-female regiment of artillery, and so that's going to be that regiment when I get them built up.
That sounds really cool, actually. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All female artillery. I love it.
Well, and that's actually getting inspired from the Caiaphas Cain books Sandy Mitchell wrote. That's part of the lore right now. He attaches to a Valhallan regiment, but it's two regiments that were both critically undermanned. One was an all-female, one was an all-male, and now they have to mix regiments. So I started getting deeper into the lore and found out that when Gilliman broke the legions from 40k back in Heresy days, he broke everything though. Like, so there would be no commander that could hold too much control over everything. So one like guard commander can't have an artillery regiment, a tank regiment, and an infantry regiment under his command because it's too much consolidated power.
Yeah, that I said because as a guy who specialized in playing Imperial Navy or Aeronautical Imperialis, a lot of people are like, why don't the guards have their own flyers? Like, I'm glad you asked. Insert lore dump.
They know not what they do asking these questions.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what keeps you at the table? What draws you back to tabletop gaming?
I mean, what's keeping me in it right now, like I said, is the hobby aspect of it, and it's been such a good thing for my mental health, honestly, to be able to focus attention into that. And so, I mean, I keep coming back for it, and like I said, I've got all this lore that I've got wrote out for multiple regiments to get them going. And so I'm excited to sit down and work on that. And every little bit of progress I get, it's just like, feels so good just to get it done.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. That makes 100% sense to me.
That's something that a lot of people have touched on, and we've touched on it ourselves. The mental health aspects of hobbying. I mean, it's so beneficial. It allows us to kind of come out of the stress of quote unquote the real world and focus in on this one little thing. It's something that we can control. It's something that, you know, it's a satisfaction of a job well done, or a job that, you know, even if it's not the most amazing paint job, you did it. It's a sense of accomplishment. It's something that we can always have in our back pocket. And we don't get that sense of satisfaction from a lot of things in the world now, and it's a great way to pull ourselves out of the mindset of instant gratification. Like, it takes time and it takes effort to build a model and paint it, and then, you know, the reward is that even if you never play with that model, you get to know that you did it, one, and have it there to look at, to remind yourself that, hey, I did that. You know, it's a self-worth thing too. Like you can look at a well-painted model and say, you know, I may not have succeeded today, but I can still do awesome things. It staves off that feeling of, say, you know, the feeling of loss of self-worth or something. You feel like you can't do anything right. Well, I built that model and I painted it exactly how I wanted to. And it's kind of it's a talisman to hold up against the, as Churchill would say, the black dog.
Well, not just that. I mean, a lot of times it combats the expenditure of time. Like, I love video games, which the next guy, and I still play them. I play Enlisted, hell, let's play a lot of games. But the cool thing about something I've always enjoyed about my models is, and even my wife who doesn't play, she'll notice this too, and she's always encouraging of it as well, is when I'm done, when I spent 30 minutes doing that, not only do I'm focusing like I would anywhere else, but with this, it's an act of creation. And when I'm done, I have something to like you said, I have something to show for it. So when I put it on my display case, it's like, yeah, I didn't get much done, but hey, I did finish, one tank, or I finished like 5 guys. Like, hey, that's pretty cool. Or I'll show off. I'm a big WYSIWYG guy. So, I'm like, hey, look there. I was like, he says it's supposed to come with a pistol. Hey, there's this pistol right there. And it's in the appropriate spot of where a guy would naturally draw a pistol instead of like having it all wonky somewhere. It's like the attention to detail, just it scratches a good itch. And when you're done, you still have something to show for it. It's just a weirdly good feeling.
It's the little things that really add up. Like, just little battle damage on dreadnoughts really make them put together like good pieces of art.
Yeah, I used to use a toothpick and some white paint, and one of my favorite things about my old flyers that I always talk about is for my door gunners. Every time they actually killed a model, I'd put a little tally mark right next to their door on the Valkyries. So every now and then you'd see one of them, and like my twin vendettas who ended up killing Orc Stampa during an Apocalypse game, I ended up putting like a little orc skull on the side of their fuselage. Or both of them was like, why do they have those? Like, I'm glad you asked. They killed an Orc Stampa. Or like, oh, I see you put little tally marks. Is that just an idea? I was like, no, that guy's actually killed like 8 people. I was like, I just keep track of my little plane.
That's awesome.
So we talked a little bit before we started recording about what you've been doing lately, Larks. You said that you're building a tournament list, trying to get a little bit more competitive, a little bit more gritty. Why don't you tell us about that?
So yeah, I've been working on a tournament list, just trialing different things throughout the guard book. So I've been heavily skewing into certain things to force focus it in RTTs and stuff, or just friendly games with some of the guys I play with. Which friendly games, I use that term lightly, honestly. It's every game is a sweat box. Like, it is bad, like how tournament heavy these guys are. But with the forced focus, let's see, I've ran a 19 gun artillery list recently, which, yes, it does output the damage that I need to get stuff done, but you can't score objectives with it. It just makes it way too hard to do. I've run a pretty much all tank focus list, and I'm also trying to not use the Lord Solar and super heavies right now, because I feel those are crutches for the faction. So I'm trying to figure out things besides those. I know those are powerful, and I know I should have those on my list, and they should be auto takes. But I'm trying not to get into those specifically right now.
It's understandable. I mean, and slant lists, I mean, they're really powerful, but at the same time, you can make a glass cannon, or you can make a brick that doesn't shoot at all. And it's those kind of lists, they come with costs and benefits. How, like you were telling us a little bit before, like, you've been more of a narrative guy, but you're moving into that competitive scene. Can you tell us a little bit about how different it is from playing narratively with friends to moving into the sweat box?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always played narrative, and I've always just taken whatever I think's fun, and I know that there's better options most of the time to take, but I'm like, nah, I'm gonna take these because it's fun. And so I've always done that, and it's been great, and yes, I do have fun with it. It's also not fun when you play a game though, and one person in the game is just kicking the crap out of the other guy, like it's over by turn 2 or 3. I don't think that's ever a fun game, whether I'm on the winning side or the losing side. So I've always been a little more reserved, and that's my problem with it, is that I am too reserved, I think, for the lists I want to take, because I want my opponent to be able to enjoy themselves too. But moving into more of a tournament mindset, it's more of, nope, I'm here to win this game. I need to do what I need to do to win this game, and I need to turn off that this is just for fun right now when I'm playing a tournament.
I can imagine the difficulty there of, like, coming from the, oh, I'm just playing for fun, to, man, I've really got to make this list work for me, and understanding, like, from narrative, sure, you want to know your opponent's rules and all that, but at the same time, you have to know what other people's stuff can do if you want to beat it in competitive. And I've never played competitively, I've never played in a tournament or anything, but I could see the difficulty therein of, like, just really trying hard to win. And it appeals to me. It appeals to the try hard in my mind, but for me, I've never been able to get away from the narrative, from the fluff of it enough to want to jump into competitive.
Yeah, and so like I said, it is rough trying to make that switch from I just want to have fun to I'm here to win this tournament, or I'm going to try my best to win the tournament. And like I said, I'm still working toward that right now by trialing different things in my list. So I keep jumping around, like, okay, let me focus, like I said, like all artillery and see how that goes, or all tanks, see how that goes. And I'm starting to get it dialed in. I'm still not quite there yet, so I'm still working on it. I'm still going to be playing some skew lists, but while I'm doing that, I'm having fun, and I'm learning, like you said, you have to know your opponent's rules so you don't get the gotcha moments, or they bust that one stratagem out and you're like, what the hell is that? You know, you can't be having those things happen to you. You have to be able to expect those, and where to apply pressure to their army when you see how they deploy.
It's such an interesting, I guess it scratches the tactical itch more than a narrative play would.
I've never thought about it that way, I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things that it can really key off if you're doing it, but it's, I mean, everything down to deployment matters, everything. And where I'm at, we have been running player place terrain, so terrain placement can win or lose you the game.
I was just about to ask how terrain worked for your groups. I'm always super curious how that works for everybody.
Well, my last tournament, the last RTT I went to, we ran fixed, but we have been running player place, so I don't know where they're going to go from here. But having player place terrain, like I said, just even if you mess that up, that can cost you the game. Like, it gets down to that kind of focus. I'm hoping that we continue to go with the fixed. It will make it harder if I do run any super heavies, but I think I can manage to get around that.
So you've been playing much longer than me. You know, I don't think I came in until 6th. Oh, I really want to say this when I jumped in full time, but I know you remember scatter die, right?
Dude, I remember guess range weapons on mortars and basilisks.
Oh, baby, I'm about to say, don't even get started about bolt action. It's one of my other favorite things, that there's no pre-measuring. Oh, I love that. I love someone moving in, like, oh, I'm still out of range. I'm like, well, eat a machine gun sandwich. But anyways, so that's what I do a lot of times with terrain. It's something I found that's a pretty cool idea when people are against player place terrain, is bring a scatter die or bring a, oh man, I've been working on that. I'm trying to think. I think a D8. Yeah, I think a D8 will work. And what you do is you roll it. And I took this from Zona Alpha, because how grenades work is you roll a D8, and depending on which way the dice is pointing, and depending on what number, that's how many inches it's off. You know, if it misses. So that's the same thing. If you don't have a scatter die, you just roll a D8. So you can place your terrain right there, and then roll a scatter die and one die, or roll a D8, and that tells you how far to actually shift that piece of terrain. You know, so a lot of times I think that'll kind of help when someone's against player place terrain and placing terrain for advantage. You know, kind of adds in that fun little random factor to make everybody feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, that would actually be a lot of fun doing it that way, I think. Like I said, with our player place terrain, though, for everything that we run, the group has 3D printed a bunch of sets of terrain out. I think we have like 20 sets of terrain. And it's exactly identical as what you get. So you get a large ruin, you get a medium ruin, you get a couple small ruins, you get a forest, and a couple of the shipping containers that GW put out. And both players have exactly the same amount of terrain. So you can't get it within 5 inches of each other, or if for the big terrain, or 4 inches with the small terrain, and the containers and the forests are the only thing that can actually touch the edge of the map. So
with modern day 40k, there's still like fun terrain rules where, like, Promethean pipes give you like a bonus in your flamers, or you can get like better ammo at an ammo container. Does the Sky Shield landing platform do anything anymore? Like, are those still things?
The only thing that is really in right now is the benefit of cover, which any terrain pretty much gives you. You can't see through ruins with the new update that they just put out. They've changed it so all ruins are basically infinitely high for line of sight purposes, unless you tow into it if you're a big monster or you're all the way in it with squad. And then we still use some ruins are line of sight blocking regardless whether you're in it or not, so you can't see through it no matter what.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know we were talking offline about the old city fighting codex and stuff like that, man. I miss a lot of those old, just funky rules. Like, I always thought they were fun just to bust out, you know?
I absolutely love those, especially playing catechins, because that's the closest I can get to the Gaunt's Ghost right now for rules wise. So I've been using them, and the flamers, like you said, with the Promethean pipes, being able to pump the range up on those was crazy and fun.
Yeah, with my flying Valkyrie wing, I used to put my Scions in there, and that's what I'd give them, is the flamer. So when they dropped out, it was just, you know, hot shot last rifles and just flamethrowers. Like, it's time to get it close.
Yeah, I definitely miss the Vendettas since they're going away with those. Like, that upsets me, but that's going to ruin my all air list that I'm getting ready to try out here pretty quick. So
That's something I've been thinking about. Like all the legend stuff. I wonder if they're pulling those back to re-release them or like make another unit to fit that bill, or if they're just trying to get rid of stuff that they feel like is OP or the models are too old, doesn't fit their art style anymore, or what.
well, with the Vendetta specifically, it doesn't make any sense because it's a couple Forge World pieces that they made. So it's like twin las cannons that mount under the wings, and then a twin las cannon that mounts in the nose fuselage where the multi-laser would go. And so it's just a Valkyrie. That's all it is, plastic Valkyrie kit. Comparatively, though, they left the Vulture in the game, which is a complete Forge World kit with like Punishers and everything. It's crazy that, like, if they were going to go for the aspect of it's too hard to manufacture or keep up with, if anything, the Vulture should have went away.
Yeah, the Vendetta wasn't hard to make. I just saved my heavy weapon teams. I just saved my last cannons because I always use auto cannons. I just saved my last cannons and just glued two of them together and put two pair on each wing, you know, and then put the ones on the fuselage, and boom, Vendetta. Same thing with my Vulture. I didn't buy the whole Forge World model with a whole huge like fan and everything. I just ordered the Gatling, the Punisher Gatlings, and just put it on another Valkyrie I had, and like, it's now a Vulture. No one really cared. Like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, cool.
Yeah, I saw a lot of conversions for Vendettas when they first dropped them. People were taking the missile launchers and putting like plastic card around what the missile should be, and using the missile bodies for the stuff. So you'd have like a boxed in part, and then cut the missile tip off, and then cut the las cannon so you have a las cannon barrel sticking out, because that was similar to how the Forge World one looked.
Yeah, before they introduced split fire, that's what you had to do. So Valks were your anti-infantry with the rocket pods and the heavy bolter or the multi-laser, and your Vendettas, you went straight, you know, las cannon. That was just for hunting armor in the back lines. They were a good pair. I was really surprised they just took Vendettas out. I was like, what?
I still think they need to come down by about 50 points though to be remotely playable competitive.
Yeah, and that's the other sad thing, is when they're not competitive. Like, when I took them and stuff, they weren't really competitive. It's just that no one was ready for that. So when they heard you play guard, and they brought all sorts of anti-tank stuff, and then when I'd show up with like 5 flyers, I was like, hey. So I had 5 flyers, an Aegis defense line, you know, sporadic little veteran infantry units, and like maybe I think a Chimera and a Wyvern. So I had like long-range artillery to keep them moving, you know, and to flush them up against my Aegis defense line where all my infantry were hiding. You know, they took a lot of casualties, but then I had the air strikes just coming in from every which direction I could, just causing just mayhem and pelting them. And sometimes it won, sometimes it didn't, but it's just like, I compare it to, you know, when I was playing Magic the Gathering with a blue deck. You know, I may not always win, but I'm going to make a confusing game and really make you think and work for it. You know, it's not just going to be a stand and shoot. That's not going to happen. Like, you're going to have to fire and maneuver.
Yeah, for sure. I know I'm in the same boat. I have 2 of each right now, so 2 Valkyries, 2 Vendettas, and 2 Vultures, and it's like, I gotta put those off to the side for a while because they're not so good this edition.
Heartbreaking. I hear the Corvus Black Star is still pretty good. I literally got a Deathwatch army that I gave to my brother just for the Corvus Black Stars. Those things are awesome.
I haven't looked at their data sheet, so I don't know yet because our local Deathwatch guy hasn't run them, so I don't know. I'd have to look at the sheet.
I wonder. So with the Primaris stuff, and I've been listening to the Dark Imperium books. Speaking of flyers, I wonder if they're going to come out with an Overlord, and if they're actually going to keep it true to the Overlord in the books, or if they're going to nerf it down. Because the Overlord is in the books is kind of like if you strapped 2 Thunderhawks together.
Yeah.
It's a twin hull kind of thing. And I would love to see that as almost like a Manta counter. I mean, it would be hard to field competitively, of course, but you know, part of me just wants to see massive Space Marine flyer coming over.
I'm not sure if they would do that or not. Just from the size perspective, you're saying, that would be big. Because they already have the Thunderhawk and the Stormbird. I don't know if we can use the Stormbird in 40k, but that's a 30k lander that's bigger than the Thunderhawk. So,
I mean, I'm the kind of guy that just wants the big, huge model, even if it's not usable. Like I'm working on a alternative design for a Manta right now, and it's ridiculous.
Big models are just really awesome to look at. Just having them there is intimidating.
I've always dreamed of building like a Manta proxy, but build it set up as a army case. So that when I roll up to the store, I'm holding this Manta, and then I pull all of my troops out of the Manta.
Oh, that's sick.
So yeah, we had an Armies on Parade at my local GW store, and again, I know Beardo, you know this. I can't paint for shit. Like my models look pretty bad, but they're painted. So what I did to make it cool, because I was the only Imperial Navy cat, is and again my wife helped me build this, so I super appreciate it. Because it was like the day before her birthday. Just excited to get a power tool because I'm not a big tool guy. So I ended up getting like a sawzall. We ended up getting 2 pieces of I think particle wood, yeah, and some PVC pipe. And what we built was like basically like a hanger. So it had 2 things. It had the center cut out of the top one, and it was like halfway down, so it was almost like an elevator for like a carrier or for like a ship, for like a hangar bay. And then we just wrapped the outside with like a perspective, so when you look at it, it looked like you're looking out into space. And that was what we had that set in. That became like my army carrier. It was just this like giant, it's like 2 foot tall, 2 pieces of wood with some pipes, but it looked like a hanger. So that's always what I carried my models in. But back to what you're saying about the big models is, I think you got to go back to foot traffic. I think that's what gets people in stores for GW. I remember the first one I saw 40k models painted. I was super young at like a mall, and I saw that in the case. And I was in Texas at the time, so they had like a Texas fly. It was like a Texas chapter of Space Marines, super cool. And I still remember to this day. So I think you have like those big models and they're painted well, and you put them right outside the store, like in the case in the window of the store. That just draws in so many more people. So even if the model's not really usable, you know, or super competitive, I think it's still going to draw in a lot of that foot traffic. That I think is vital really for any type of hobby store, regardless if it's competitive or not.
Having Titans in the window was like a huge thing. One of the only stores I've ever seen that had it, man. Like I had to go in and see it because they had like 2 warlords. It was a diorama set up with Titans. I want to say it was versus like Chaos Knights, and man, the diorama alone was beautiful.
Yeah, I do love the big models. Like, don't get me wrong, I try to, like I said, I'm trying to get more of a competitive mindset, so I look at them, I'm like, ugh. Like, I can run a Warhound, and I have one, so I'm like, oh, I want to do that, and test played a few games, and it's like, no, they're just not viable right now, even though they should be. But yeah, setting up a Warhound on table, watching your opponent's reaction, or in the case of the Guard, setting up 2 super heavies on the table and watching your opponent's reaction.
I can only imagine how awesome that is. So now we have 2 Titan owners in the Quiet Order captaincy, because Block has a Warhound Titan that he runs with his white scars. That's awesome.
Yeah, my Warhound's still unpainted because that's the one aspect of the hobby. I love the finished result when I do it, and I do a pretty decent job when I do it, but I hate the process of painting, so it's like, I still got to get that one painted up. And kind of kicking back to the thing I brought up earlier about 3D printing, my buddy just printed out a Warlord Titan, so...
Oh man, I can only imagine. Like, is he using resin or FDM?
Resin printer. It's multiple
Oh,
pieces,
that's really
obviously,
good.
for the legs, but he's figured out how to like hollow everything out and everything and make it super light. I have the Mastodon for 30k, my 30k army, and he printed that out, and that's lighter than a Forge World Sakaran.
Wow.
That's sick.
Yeah, he has his process dialed in, to say.
That is awesome. I mean, like I said, I cannot wait to get a 3D printer, because once I do, it's going to be bad. It's going to be off to the races.
I mean, it's part of what's fueling my projects. Like, I have 80 Krieg right now, for instance, that'll be part of one of my regiments, and my main regiment that I'm going to be doing. So, getting ready to start building those up. Started already the other night, got a couple characters on bases, but I'm just like, oh, I got to put like 80 more dudes together and paint them. No.
So, Larks, you mentioned earlier that you're like building different regiments. Tell us a little bit about those regiments. Like, what's the fluff?
All right, so like I was getting into with the all artillery company, the fluff on that is that they're coming from a world that's covered by like catastrophic storms, like hurricanes and stuff like that. So any break in the weather, they just can bombard, and like they just practice regiment. You know, that's all they do is artillery. So they're into that, and so that's going to be my 527th Stormbreakers Field Artillery Regiment. Led by Colonel Victoria Steele and Commissar Natalia Volkova. Those are going to be the two primary officers of that unit. And like I said, so it's going to be an all-female regiment, so everything for them is going to be that way. And it's going to focus more on the like field gun style of artillery, so not necessarily, powered artillery like basilisks and Manticores. They will have some of that, but it won't be a lot. It's going to be more a field gun style artillery.
Nice, I like it.
Dude,
That's awesome.
I'm stoked about it because it's like there's so many artillery options for guard too. So that's why I was like, I gotta do this. And then when I play on the tabletop and stuff like that, I can bring in, like, when I want to bring in artillery, it'll be like, okay, I'm going to bring in that chunk of artillery and their little bit of infantry supporting it. And, when I build my list in, so I can be like, okay, they're going to have infantry squads with mortars and some field guns, and that'll be part of my list when I start playing it. So I can still bring some narrative into the games, even though I'm going to be trying to go super hyper competitive.
I feel like having the narrative there is always important.
Yeah, and then I've also come up with a logistics support division. So it's LD 124, and they're going to be a olive drab is the secondary color. Like a desert sand will be a matte desert sand will be their primary, and then accents will be a dark gray. Their emblem is going to be a gear like a cogwheel, kind of similar to Mechanicus. That is going to be a dark gray laurel with or a dark gray cog. I mean, with a wreath that's like a burnt orange. Will be their thing, and so that's just. I don't want to have too many vehicles for any one regiment, so I'm going to dump a bunch of vehicles into that. So it's like the motor pool for any regiments that need extra support.
That's awesome, man. I love it.
I also mentioned earlier my Spec Ops style one that's going to be all like Scions and Kasserkins and stuff, and that's going to be the 3rd Company Desert Ghost. So they're going to have a tan color scheme. For their armor, dark brown for like the fatigues, and then a light kind of dusty blue for their accent markings. So I'm going to be doing that, and that's going to be a fun one to build up, but it's gonna be a smaller one. It'll be probably only like the 60 or 80 infantry, and then like they're gonna be mechanized, so chimeras or Tauroxes, stuff like that.
I love the mechanized infantry. I mean,
Yep.
when I build my guard army, which is going to be the Tenebrand first, you know, more lore for that coming later on with the narrative campaign. But they're the Tenebrand first armored, and like I love tanks. It's, you know, the kid in me is dinosaurs and tanks, man. It's big, heavy machinery. I love it.
I'm a big mechs fan. I love mechs, my big walkers.
That's what drew me into playing Tau. Like right now, I'm working on the. I just got the Agastus box in, and I've got all the dreads. So I've got a Redemptor, a
Dread
Ballistus, a the Ballistus, the Brutalis, and 2 Invictor Warsuits and their Raven Guard successors. So it's sneaky beaky mechs.
Dude, that's gonna be an
Very
awesome
nice.
force when you get it done up.
It's a lot of fun, and I've shown you guys. I think I'm kit bashing a Storm Surge with a bunch of
I
Gunpla
saw 'em.
parts.
They look awesome. Gunpla's cool too.
It's a great place to get kit bash materials. Let me tell you, because even the more sci-fi looking parts. Like one of my dreads is going to be a Tech Marine dread, and I'm using
Oh, that's
combat
cool.
arms from a Gundam set to give him his back arms.
Yeah, his little backpack.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the Brutalis, because honestly, if a Tech Marine could, he would be a Brutalis.
Yeah, that would make sense for
Yeah,
Tech Marine.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. A lot of black paint. A lot of black paint. Another thing I really love for the hobby thing is on all of my armies, I use UV paint as one of the accents. So with the Hive Fleet 4Cs, they have a dry brush of a light blue fluorescent over the white dry brush, and the eyes and the weapons are based in a really deep red, but then highlighted with orange fluorescent paint. The Tau are panel lined with they're like almost like the vaporwave purple to aqua fade, airbrush fade, but they're panel lined with a hot pink fluorescent. So when the black lights come on, like the narrative campaign that we're working on is going to be on a night world, so a lot of the battle reports are going to be kind of moody light with black
Yeah.
lights. So when the black lights come on, it turns into Tron Tau, because all the panels have got this glow coming under them. And then the Raven Guard, the Sable Hunt, that's my favorite. And it's a lot of work, and it's really hard to do because you have to paint it under a black light. But I've got a transparent UV reactive paint that my guys are. The colors are black, primarily flat black, with gold accents and like ice blue. And they're in the transparent paint, it kind of shows like a light blue under black light, but they're very unadorned when the black lights aren't on. But when they turn on, I've painted plumage and feathers all across their armor, so like you can't see it, but it's there.
Yeah.
Dude, that probably will look badass when the black lights hit on it.
I hope so. That's what I'm aiming for. I love the spectacle. Like, when you think about the lore, the books, and this goes back to having like cool regiments and stuff and the fluff reasons for why they are what they are. Like when you read the books, these battles are massive and there's so much going on.
Yeah, there's a
and
lot.
It's really hard to capture that kind of big battle feel outside of something like epic size, whatever. But having those details, the immersion, and your reasons for why this is what it is, and then in a battle report, all that coming together on a battlefield, because they need to be able to tell who's who, so they have to paint in fluorescent paint to
Oh, that's cool.
like have the ID markers. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. So
like a safety vest, like a knight, like neon.
Yeah, so the Marines, the kind of suspension of disbelief thing is it's almost like the salamanders, where they have their heat vision and they work like heaters into their armor into really intricate designs and stuff that only other salamanders can see. The plumage and stuff on the Marines is visible in their extended sensor suite. So they can see it, but everybody else may not be able to. And then the flora on this world is all fungal. So there's this bunch of mushroom trees and stuff, and they all emit light. So the bioluminescence in this area is purples and like aqua. And the lower down you go, the more blue it gets. So the Tau are actually painted in camouflage for the world. But they have the pink panel lines to kind of show, okay, this is where I'm at to my other guys.
Okay.
Dude, I love it. That's like getting so deep into the lore of everything for the planet that they're on and everything else. I love that.
Everything
kind of
matches up very clearly and accurate.
I go way too deep into the lore. I've been told I have the too much gene. I take everything to the nth degree. But this is like 40K is one place where I can do that, and it's not a problem.
Well, and that's one of the reasons like I love the Guard, is because you can totally dive into it like I've been doing with all my different regiments that I want to do. And I still have other ideas for like a Talaran style one, and then like my main one, which is they're gonna hail from like an agro world. So like they have to grow the food for everybody. But that means they also have to have a great defense force. So they're gonna have a little bit of everything like in that. So
See, I love that concept. So, what have you guys got coming up? What kind of projects are you working on?
For me, I'm working on a Blue Scribe story right now. It's probably my longest story yet. About 9 minutes.
nice, dude. I'm be interested to hear that. I love some of the lore and stuff, especially from demons and whatnot.
Yep.
Me right now, I've got a batch of Krieg to paint for my Verdant Sentinels that I'm going to be doing. That's my guys for my aggro world. So I've got about 100 Krieg I got to put together and get painted up. So that's next on the plate.
That is a lot of Krieg. The Tenebrine first are going to have a really heavy Krieg contingent because they have to dig, and like they're in a underground station. So who else would you rather have digging than the Kriegsmen?
Yeah,
Diggy hole.
and that's what, like, for my Krieg, it's the actual Krieg, obviously they come from a eradicate, it's all a radiated world or whatever. Mine, it's that there's such an abundance of stuff that around, like food and water and everything else from their planet, that they're able to just go ham and have a bunch of people. So they're going to be more of like a special forces of the basic infantry from my regiment.
Nice.
What the hell is pulling? What the hell is this thing? Why is there a cat in the break room?
Mittens. You know what I said about the guardsmen?
There are no animals allowed in the break room.
He's not an animal. He's my friend. Mittens, the warped beast.
Mittens, stop trying to consume Larks' leg, please.
He's just going for a little snack.
Can it be not my leg though? Get the cat off my leg, please.
I hope we have some spare corpse starch lying around.
I'll check the storeroom.